Hello guys, let's talk about Coffee Lake. As the start screen said, is there any cream with that coffee? We'll answer that question in a bit. Busy at the moment. If you saw the live stream with Battlefront 2 at the weekend, you'd realise that I had quite a few things happening recently with a close friend having some bad news, then getting ill. Some other stuff happening as well in the background. So I haven't had time to do a video, so this is why I thought I'd do like half an hour or something, a live stream just talking about Coffee Lake. I think I've left it long enough now so that a lot of reviews or a lot of reviewers have done their reviews and they've started answering questions about their benchmarks. I had an opinion on Coffee Lake prior to this. I did a Coffee Lake video, maybe a month, 5 weeks ago. Pretty much everything I said in that video I'll stand by because it's pretty much what's happened. As for is there any cream with that, I think there's a bit, but then you've also got to take that with a pinch of salt in that, you know, if it hadn't been for AMD releasing Ryzen and really boosting core count on the mainstream, would Intel have gone to a 6-core 12-thread i7 on the standard desktop platform? I doubt it. There's another bit of salt in that you have to upgrade to the Z370 board, even though it uses the same pin layout as the Z270, so that kind of pisses me off a little bit, but there are some good things. So anyway, we've got a few websites open here, so we're just gonna have a chat basically. If anyone's in the chat, just jump in if you've got any questions. I'll try and answer them. I've got the chat open on this panel here, and I can monitor the stream on another channel, so yeah, just jump in if you have any questions. So let's just go over, I'm just using WCCF Tech because it's, you know, it has all the charts I need. We'll just skip right down to what comes in the lineup. Although this is very interesting. This is the pinout for Kaby Lake and Coffee Lake. So they're both LGA 1151, Coffee Lake versus Kaby Lake. So you can see that there have been changes, but I mean, really, did they need to make these changes? I don't think so, not really. I mean, they could have let you use, I mean, and even with the changes, they can still use the same chipset. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, there's quite a lot of salt for me about that for people who are on that platform. I'm not. I'm on X99, so it doesn't bother me. Although X299 is a different thing. So there is a, where is it gone? There was one chart in this, that is it here? Yeah, mainstream family. Second page, nice picture of the lithography. I'm assuming that's the i7 8700K. There's 6 cores there, must be. Pardon me guys, I've still got a bit of a cold. And so here it just talks about basically what you're gonna get. So there is no disputing the fact that if you get an i7 8700K, it's the new king of the hill. 6 cores, 12 threads, 4.3 gigahertz boost across all cores. That's without overclocking it. I have seen people getting their samples to just around 5 gigahertz stable. However, bear in mind this thing is hot because Intel, as we all know, have stopped soldering their IHSs and they're using this really rubbish thermal material between them. So I know you could buy one of these, delit it, put some liquid metal on it, and you'll probably get better thermals. If you're spending that much money on a chip, do you want to take the risk of bricking it? I mean, that's up to you. Only you can answer that. I would do it just to keep the thermals in check, and it would also mean that you don't have to use such an exotic cooling solution. I mean, generally, if you're going to overclock one of these, you want to be using water. You want to be using a good AIO or an open loop solution. But very, very nice chip. This is more what I would be looking at. i5 8600K, 6 cores, 6 threads, but an i5 with 6 cores is pretty good. Again, 4.3 gigahertz boost. These are very good overclockers from what I've seen online. They also have a very enticing price point as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But again, I've seen people getting 5 gigahertz on these. They're hot again. I mean, essentially, it's an i7 with hyper-threading turned off. somehow, probably a microcode change. i3, again, pretty cool. i3 8350K, 4 cores, 4 threads, basically the old i5. Pretty good overclocker as well, by all accounts. But this is what I'm really interested in. So that's Intel's slide. This is a better slide, as it were. So we're going to kind of ignore that, and we're going to ignore the 8400, and we're going to ignore the 8700. I'm just talking about K SKUs tonight. So they're all Coffee Lake S, they're all 14 nanometers. So i3, 4 cores, 4 threads, like I said. i5, 6 cores, 6 threads. i7, 6 cores, 12 threads. That is impressive. Now, looking at the boost clock max, so this is what you're going to get probably on 1 or 2 cores in certain situations without an overclock. The i7 will hit 4.7 gigahertz, the i5 will hit 4.3, and the i3 doesn't give you one. Level 3 cache, so the i3's got 6 megs, and the i5's got 9, and the i7's got 12, so pretty standard there. All LGA 1151. Like I said, you need a 300 series board to run these, which I'm going to say right now is my first bit of salt when it comes to Intel. They could have easily allowed you to put this onto the existing 200 series platform, because the reality is, buying a 300 series board, you're not really getting anything new from what I can see. I mean, having had a look at a few of the boards, I can't really see a huge difference in terms of feature set that I would be interested in anyway, between a top of the line 200 series board and a top of the line 300 series board. So again, pisses me off that Intel do this, especially with AMD saying they're going to support pardon me guys, it's that cold. Especially with AMD saying they're going to support their current socket for Ryzen till at least 2020. So, you know, although I have a first generation Ryzen product, when Gen 3 comes out, I can theoretically take that chip, put it in the board, the B350 board I got, and with the BIOS update, it should be able to run that no problem. And for me, I think that would make me get onto Intel's platform a lot quicker than it took me with the X99 platform. If the motherboards had more longevity, then yeah, I would be more inclined to look at Intel more seriously, just because it's a big cost. Like, because I'm going to be overclocking, so I'm going to spend the premium to get a K-SKU chip anyway, and then you're paying a premium to get a chipset, because Intel charge a lot for chipsets, no matter what people say. And then we get down to price, guys. So i3 coming in at 168, pretty competitive when you look at Ryzen 3. i5's coming in at 257, that's going for the Ryzen 5 market, and the i7's coming in at 359. Remember, these prices are all K-SKUs, guys. They're not the non-K-SKU chip. I'm talking about overclockable chips just now. So 359 for the i7, which on the face of it, a year or two ago, for a 6-core 12-thread chip would seem very, very reasonable. It would do to me. And it looks like they're going after the kind of R7, Ryzen 7, 1700, 1700X market. So yeah, like, very happy. Don't get me wrong, I'm really, really happy that Intel have done a kind of what they normally do. They've done that iterative jump, but this time they've done it with core count, and that's only good for you guys, the consumers, and me. So you're gonna get more bang for your buck, definitely. But is there any cream with that buck? I don't know. A lot of people have been talking about is this the end of Ryzen and things, and I really don't think so. I mean, there's no doubts about it. When you look at the benchmarks, the 8700K is a beast. It is an absolute beast in gaming. It destroys anything AMD has at the moment, and it should. You know, because when you look at this, it's a $359 chip, you know, against the 1700X, or in fact, if you look at it core for core against an R5 1600 or an R5 1600X, it should destroy it. It's $100 more expensive, so I'd be very surprised if it had similar performance. Plus, we all know that Intel has better IPC, yada yada yada. What I'm more interested in is, are you, if you're going to get onto the 8th gen platform, going to get bang for your buck? And should you discount what AMD are doing at the moment? Because I really don't think you should. So we're going to get off this now, because I'm not sure if there's anything else I really want to look at. I suppose we could have a look at quick look at their testing. So TimeSpy, I'm not bothered really about TimeSpy. It's not going to show anything. CPU performance, 3D Mark Firefly. So this is IPC. So there's the 7900X. So where is 8700K overclocked, 23,000. 8700K out of the box, 19,000. Now Ryzen 7 1700X, 18,000. So out of the box, it's nearly it's 1,800 points behind. Overclocked, it's well behind that. But I don't know if this 1700X is overclocked. So again, I'm not sure what to say. But is it a surprise? It's not really a surprise, to be honest. Better IPC, and you know, an overclocked 8700K. It's probably going to be close to a gigahertz faster than that 1700X. But 1700X is no slouch. I mean, it's up there. You're gonna still have a really good experience with physics score numbers like that. So let's move back down again. So i5 8600K overclock 16,000, and where's the R5? It's probably gonna 1600X 16,000, 8600K 16,000. So they're really similar. But remember, this is 6 cores, 6 threads. This is 6 cores, 12 threads. But again, this i5 is going to be running about a gigahertz faster. So the results are comparable. I wouldn't say that, you know, you're going to have a bad performance on Ryzen if you bought that instead of an 8th gen Intel chip. And you'll probably save some money as well, guys. So Blender, this will be interesting. Less is faster. So again, here you can see, like, this is where the 1800X really pulls out, because again, you kind of expect it to. It's a little bit slower than 8700K, but again, that's going to come down to frequency rather than anything else. But they're not too far away. Like both the 1700X and the 1800X, they're not a million miles away from that 8700K. You know, and you're probably going to get on. I mean, I can almost guarantee you're going to get on the Ryzen platform cheaper. And I know this sounds like an advert for AMD, and don't view it as that, because I'm not here trying to convince you to buy a Ryzen. I'm here trying to convince you that don't believe Intel's marketing that this is the chip for you. You have to buy it. You have to get on it. I'm just saying, you know, think about it. Think about how much performance you need. Cinebench is going to show a fairly similar trend as all the other tests. The 1800X, 160 single-threaded, 1631 multi-threaded. Again, are these overclocked? I don't think so. 8700K overclocked, single-threaded, 230. There's the disparity. 70 points difference. What is it out of the box? 8700K out of the box, 212. Still 50 points disparity in single core score there. So that's IPC, and AMD can't do anything about that at the moment. They can address it next year when Zen, or Ryzen I should say, moves to 12 nanometer process and the architecture changes, but at the moment that's what they're stuck with. But again, it's not an embarrassing result. It's not like back in the days when they were on Bulldozer, etc. You know, AMD are very much still there. So let's see if we can find some gaming results. These are all going to be these are all kind of work related things. Right, let's go up here. Tom's Hardware. This will be interesting. So this is just a straight up comparison, which I find quite interesting. So again, this is MSRP, guys. This is just looking at the i7 8700K. And Tom's Hardware is looking at it versus the 1700X, so that versus the K SKU, and the 1700 versus the non-K SKU of that i7, okay? So we know all this: 6 cores, 12 threads, 8 cores, 16 threads for Ryzen, base frequency on the i7s 3.7 and 3.2 respectively. On the R7 1700, it's 3.4 and 3 gigahertz respectively. Boost frequency, this is where the difference kicks in. So the K SKU boosts to 4.7, the non-K SKU boost to 4.6. Compared to the Ryzen chip, you know, the boost frequency alone on single core, and I know it's only a single core, but you know, it's almost a gigahertz faster out of the box, guys, and that's a massive thing. You know, if AMD could have got that up, we would not be seeing this huge disparity that we're seeing. Although I don't think it's a massive disparity anyway. Again, we all know level 3 cache, Zen's got more. They're both 40 nanometer. TDP, the non-K SKU, in fact they're identical. K SKU, X SKU, non-K, non-X, they're identical. Price, now this is the interesting thing. So, Tom's Hardware are putting the 8700K up against the 1700X. So, on the face of it, the 1700X is more expensive and is going to perform worse in a lot of things, especially gaming, which is what most people are interested in. But I would suggest that what you do is you compare the 8700K to the R7 1700, because this chip here, the 1700, is going to perform with an overclock easily within between sort of 5 and 6% of what you'll get out of 1700X. With the X, you're basically paying for a guaranteed XFR or a guaranteed motherboard kind of automatic boost in frequency when you've got voltage and temperature headroom. But I mean, do you care about that? Probably not. If you're on the Ryzen platform, I would say you're probably going to overclock. So I would go for the 1700, save yourself some money. Then that's all of a sudden $40 cheaper if you can get an 8700K at MSRP, which I'm pretty sure you're not going to get at the moment. There's some pretty odd pricing happening. AMD are also lowering prices at the moment. They're very aggressive this year, AMD. I'm quite surprised. As I'm fairly sure the margins aren't huge on these Ryzen chips anyway. I mean, they'll be making money, but they're not going to be making as much as Intel are. But so yeah, very, very, very surprised with how AMD have been doing their marketing. And now let's move on to the i5 versus the R5. So again, that's costs. 4 cores, 8 threads, 6 cores, 6 threads, 6 cores, 6 threads, 6 cores, 12 threads. Things are a bit closer here, and the numbers look a bit closer, apart from obviously the case that i5 8600K is definitely going to overclock better than both these Ryzen chips. I know for a fact it'll overclock better than the 1600 because or the 1600X, because I have a 1600 and 4 gigahertz is the ceiling with that, even with a really good cooling solution and a good power supply, yada yada yada, fast memory. It's just getting past 4 gigahertz on all cores is an absolute, it's not going to happen. If you've got a chip, a 1600 that goes past 4 gigahertz, then you've got the unicorn and you should keep it. Apart from that, very, very similar, very, very similar. Ryzen, as we know, is going to have more cache. It's purely down to the architecture. They're all 40 nanometer. Again, TDP is exactly the same. Now, this is where it gets interesting for me, because I think Intel's new lineup, I think this one, if you're a gamer, I think the i5 8600K is the sweet spot. I think it's going to let you play games. It's going to let you get into light editing because you've got the extra 2 cores. It's probably going to make streaming on an i5 much more of a reality. I don't know how good the stream quality would be, but it's certainly something else you can look at for $257 MSRP. However, that requires a 300 series board, which is going to be expensive. We know what Intel boards are like, whereas let's look at the R5 1600, and again, I would argue that you look at not the 1600X here, but the 1600, which you can get for under $200 now. So when you compare that i5 against the 1600, which will get easily within, again, 5%, I would say, unless you're really unlucky in the silicon lottery. Like I say, my 1600 hits 4 gigahertz. You know, it was hard to get it there, but it hit 3.8, 3.85 very easily with, like, you know, 20 minutes tweaking in the BIOS. So you spend, say, say you spend $200 in a 1600, couple it with a B350 motherboard for another say $100 for a high-end one. That's $200, $300. You know, that's only $43 more expensive than just buying this i5, which I'm not saying is a bad chip. The i5 is going to be faster in certain situations, and especially in single thread programs, some single threaded games, than this Ryzen is. There's no two ways about it, especially at 1080p. As you up the resolution, the chip's going to have less and less to do with it. So if you're playing at 1440p, you're not going to see a huge difference between any of these chips, I would have thought. But both of them will game at over 70-80 frames per second easily, at which point I think and that's the other problem I have with this, is not only the cost to get on the platform from Intel's point of view, but a lot of the numbers I've seen where you see the disparities between, say, like the i7 8700K and an R7 1700. The i7 8700K is like, you know, in Game X is pumping out 160 FPS at 1080p ultra settings, whereas the 1700 is it's lagging behind at 120 FPS. It's like, yeah, when you get into the realms of those, once you're constantly above 60 FPS, as long as your minimums aren't terrible, am I going to notice that difference? Probably not. Therefore, is it worth paying more for that difference? In my book, I'm not sure. I would have to think about that. I got an X99. I mean, I use Intel. I think the Intel platform's great. I think they make very, very good chips, but they are expensive. The only reason I went to X99 is purely for this, for stuff like this, for content creation, for multitasking, for productivity, not for gaming. I bought my Ryzen chip machine for gaming, and then I also realized that, wow, this is actually really, really good for doing editing and things like that. I was very, very happy with what I got for my money, whereas buying into the X99 platform was a serious decision, because it's sort of the best part of £1,000 for the motherboard, CPU, and memory. So that's it. I mean, this is the thing, guys. You need to think about it, and then once you get down to the R5, there's very little difference between the i3 and the R5 in terms of performance and power. In fact, both the R5s here, the 1400 and 1300X, are rated at a lower TDP than the i3. So the i3 8350X, which is overclockable. So that's my main thing. Is I'm not here to do an Intel bash video. I'm here to do a video where you guys actually think about what you want to buy and what is important for you. Because at the end of the day, it's your money. You know, you should go and you should watch as many videos as you can, and you should be as informed as you can be. But ultimately, it's your money, and what do you want out of your money? It's like, for instance, at the moment, if I had to buy a graphics card and I was a gamer, I would buy a Vega card. And I know the price is inflated, but the price is inflated for Nvidia as well. But I would buy a Vega card because then I can get a FreeSync 2 monitor for way less than I can get with G-Sync. Unfortunately, I already have a G-Sync panel. In fact, I've got two. So I'm kind of stuck on Nvidia until AMD offer me something so compelling that I'm going to shift platform. But because I've already got those panels, those 144Hz panels, it makes no sense for me to shift from Nvidia to AMD. But if I was getting into gaming now, it would definitely be Vega. A 56 or a 64 with 1070 like or 1080 like performance. There's nothing wrong with that. Just the price at the moment. But like I said, all GPUs are affected by cryptocurrency pricing at the moment. So you've got to think about it in the same way with CPUs, guys. So let's go and have a look at TechSpot, who've also done some pretty interesting work. And again, they're concentrating on the i3, i5, i7. You'll have seen this before. And they have a range of benchmarks again. Interestingly enough, though, when they look at things like Cinebench here, the 1700 and 8700K are like pretty much neck and neck, apart from the single thread performance, which I find odd, because if we go back to, here we go, Cinebench, where's Cinebench? PCMark is at the top, isn't it? if you look at Cinebench here, and the where are we? 8700K. Oh, that's graphics. I'm an idiot. Yeah, Cinebench R15. So if we look at the 8700K here, which is their stock, which I'm assuming the other graph is, it gets 1449. And then if you look at the 1700X, oh yeah, they are quite similar actually. That's interesting. It must have been a different graph I saw. So what that was supposed to do, kids, was lead into something else I noticed, which is there was a lot of discussion, although I totally fucked that segue. There was a lot of discussion about benchmarking results, because a lot of people are getting different results, and it turns out that if you have an Asus motherboard and an 8700K or an 8600K, basically any K SKU chip and an Asus motherboard, what that Asus board does is it detects that you have an overclockable chip, and it uses something called multi-core enhancement, which means it will boost, it's a bit like XFR and AMD, so it will boost that chip beyond Intel's boost frequency on all cores if there is voltage headroom and temperature headroom, whereas on other boards like ASRoX and Gigabytes they won't. And so the disparity people were seeing in benchmarks was just that it was purely down to manufacturers. So Asus, people who tested on Asus boards and people who tested on other boards, it was like that. So Asus were higher, and there was a lot of confusion about that, but it's basically down to multi-core enhancement. Think of it like XFR for pardon me, XFR for Intel. But again, a lot of these benchmarks, you look at them and there's basically nothing in there that makes me think you need to rush out and buy an 8700K over a Ryzen R7 1700X. I mean, I would assume most of you are fairly budget orientated in that, i.e. like me, you don't have huge amounts of disposable cash, but you have some. Like, I've got an okay job, I've got money I can spend on stuff, as you can see, but I want to extract the most value I can, and I don't think the 8700K offers the most value. I actually think that probably either the i3 8350X or more likely the i5 8600K offers the best value, depending on what motherboard you compare it with, because offering the most value means that you have to overclock these chips, in my view. But for me, I think the new i5, that 6 cores and 6 threads, is such a powerhouse. It's gonna let you play pretty much anything you want. It's gonna feed any GPU you've got. It's gonna allow you to enter into the world of some light editing, maybe some light virtualization, a bit of game streaming. It just opens up your world that bit more. And I know people who are currently Twitch streaming on i5s, and it's a nightmare. Their chips run hot, it's stuttery, it's just not a nice experience all the time, but they don't have the money to upgrade. So for them, you know, a few months ago I was saying, man, you've got to get on the Ryzen platform. It's just offers so much value for you. But a lot of them really like Intel, they like what they offer, and then I would say, well, get this i5 for, if you can get that i5 for the MSRP 257, if you're not gonna go to AMD, I would say the i5 probably offers way more value to that specific person than the i7. I mean, it's a $100 price differential, and in Britain it's going to be more because prices aren't linear between the US and Britain. Plus we've got VAT, which is really shit. So basically we add 20% on to ticket price essentially, and the government collects that VAT. So it's really annoying. Value added tax, guys, and it's shite. Don't ever go to a VAT type system. It's one of the worst taxes ever. It just is totally, it hurts everyone, rich or poor. It's absolutely awful. So that's really my thoughts. That's really my thoughts on Coffee Lake. Not quite as salty as some people have been. I know Jim over at Adore TV had some fairly strong views on it. I've got a fair amount of salt, but mainly around Intel's business practices. Like, they could have brought 6 cores, 12 threads to the mainstream years ago if they wanted to. They didn't, because they didn't have to, because they had no competition. And if you've got no competition and no one pushing you, why would you do that? Why would you erode your profit margins? Whereas now, if nothing else, that's why Ryzen and AMD are still relevant, because they forced Intel to do this. And we saw it with X299 earlier in the year. Like, the X299 lineup was an absolute, pardon me guys, was an absolute disaster at Computex. All because the day before AMD came out and it Threadripper. That was it. That just tore up the rulebook for HEDT computing in my view. Like, I would love to be able to afford 1950X, but I can't. And then X299 was an absolute disaster for weeks after that. Intel trying to get their message out. I mean, who the hell buys a $300, $400 motherboard and puts a quad core in it? Who's going to buy Skylake X? But yeah, that's my kind of level of Intel salt. But for Coffee Lake, I think it's what's to be expected. It's that TikTok, you know, this Coffee Lake for me is the kind of final iteration, that final tweak of the Skylake architecture, if you like. And it's also brought more value in terms of core count, because pricing hasn't really shifted for the i3, i5, i7 SKUs, but you're getting more cores, more threads. So from that point of view, you're doing pretty well. I mean, even on the i3s, you might say, well, you're still only getting 4 threads, but you've got 4 physical cores now, not 2 with hyper-threading, and that does make a difference. That does make a difference in certain programs, certain situations. Would I buy it over an R7 1700? Would I get that i7 8700K over an R7 1700? Nah, no way. The AMD platform offers more value. It's for me, I'm not just a gamer, so for me, I would want the extra cores and threads for other things that I do. I do virtualization, things like that. Also, the cost of entry is lower. I'm pretty sure 300 series motherboards will come with a pretty hefty price tag to get the same level of connectivity as you're going to get on a similarly spec'd X370 board from AMD. But that's it, guys. So if you've got any questions, launch them in the chat. I'm going to hang about for a little while. But if you don't have any questions, I'll get out of here. But yeah, Coffee Lake, it's okay. The biggest thing for me with Coffee Lake is more cores, more threads. That's it. We knew that the IPC was there. We knew that the frequencies would go up because this is the 3rd iteration of that architecture, so they should be going up. Intel have got the process down to a T now, their lithography process, so they should be getting better yields, better frequencies out of this architecture, and they are, and that's what we're seeing. However, there's still quite a lot of salt. You have to move on to a new motherboard chipset, which is a joke because it uses the same socket as Kaby Lake. I really feel for people who are buying this now. Like I said, if I had a Z270 motherboard, I would be much more inclined to buy that i7 8700K at 350 bucks. I'd be like, yeah, give me a slice of that pie. I'll stick that bad boy in my motherboard now, and wow, all of a sudden I'm doing more video editing, I'm doing more streaming, I'm doing some virtualization. And also it's a gaming beast. That chip is king of the hill. But it runs hot, and that's down to Intel's manufacturing processes just cheaping out on that thermal compound to the IHS. Anyway, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked or found it interesting. I don't know if like is the right word, but I hope you found my views on Coffee Lake interesting. And I hope you find them quite balanced. And I'm purely, I come at things from a kind of I'm not really a person who's that impressed by, like, I don't care if I can overclock my chip to 5 GHz. What I do care about is the value it gives me for the amount of money I have to spend. So that's where a lot of the Coffee Lake salt comes from. So to sum up, guys, before I leave, Coffee Lake, does it come with cream? A little bit, but not much. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you again in another great video. Bye. Bye again. I need to turn it off over here. Bye now.